Okay, hopefully I'm up and running now. I'd like somebody to respond to let me know that they can see my screen where it says new improved bank feeds and write up, and also if you can hear me. Okay, I'll be back in about 2 minutes. Just 1 second. Okay, I think I have it set up and I think it's working okay now. Um, Today's webinar is going to be new improved bank feeds, write up, workflow. I'm Dave Manell. I'm the director of product development here, and I'm very sorry for the problem at the startup. Uh, right as I was getting ready to start the program, my screen just became a big green screen with nothing on it, and it was flashing. So who knows what that meant, but hopefully everything should go fine now. Although I notice I do not see the question, so maybe that will straighten up too, but we'll see. Anyway, sorry, and I appreciate your patience with me. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing is, in order to sign up for bank feeds, um, what you have to do is you go to Settings, and down to Company Bank Add-ons. Once you click on that, it's going to take you to 3 different things that we have for add-ons. And the first one is the bank feeds. We also have digital checks, a nice way to receive and make payments for your clients and receive payments from your clients, and also a merchant account. But what I'm going to be going into right now is the bank feeds. There's a couple of ways you can get your client set up and registered. The first is to email the registration link to the client. This is probably the most common way to do it, and the preferred way, because your client needs to log in once they have the registration. If the client was in your office, you could register now and do it directly from your computer, or if you were at your client's office, you could do it that way. So once the email goes out, your client's going to get an email very similar to this one. This is the pretend client I set up, the Exeter Feed Store, and it went from our company here, one of our internal pretend companies, Mutual Growth. They get a nice little email. They can be on their smartphone, they can be at their computer, wherever they are. All they have to do is click on the link in order to register. So they click on the link, and it takes them into a screen, this one, which is to link their accounts. From there, they usually will have to scroll down in order to accept the terms and also to get started. Once they accept the terms, it's going to come up with a group of banks that I guess are the preferred banks, or that Yodlee does a lot of work with. And if their bank is one of these banks, they can choose it. Otherwise, they come down here, don't see your institution, search here, which is what I did for this case. And then you just start typing in the name of the bank. I was looking for the Bank of David, but I didn't find it. But as you can see, there's a lot of different banks that are used with Yodlee, because these are just the ones. Bank of D. They even have the Bank of Dudley down here. Okay, so the next step is they have to log in. And there's a couple of things. They can come in here. It'll take them to the bank. I chose Bank of America. And it'll be just like their regular logging screen from the bank. And in this case, they can enter the ID and the passcode. If they see they're having an issue with that, one thing to always check is to click on this link over here. This is the link that it's going to for the bank. Once in a while, a particular bank will have a couple of logins, and so maybe they selected the wrong bank. It might be Bank of America Business, Bank of America Personal, or various things like that, Capital One 360 or Capital One. So by clicking on the link here, they'll see that, yes, it does take them to the right spot, and then they can try to log in. And as long as they can log in from that link, they know that they are using the correct login credentials from the correct site. Once they're done logging in, it's going to bring up all of the bank accounts associated with that particular bank. In my case, brought up the savings and the plus banking. At the bottom of the screen, there's also a place if they want to link another bank. So if they want to have multiple banks, they can link and set up multiple banks. That they would have to scroll down from here in order to see it. Okay, once they're done with that, all they have to do is close the window, or if they're on the register now with you at their office, there'll be a little done button at the bottom. But all they have to do is close it. Once they close it, everything is saved. And then when they transfer over into accounting power, this is what you would be seeing after they've done it. The mapping will be automatic as long as you have the bank account numbers entered and then they match. So if I had had a bank account entered for Bank for Cash checking and the last four digits were 0169, it would automatically come right into this one. Any that don't match, they'll be down here. And then the step that is followed is to just come in and select it from the available options. So since this one is for credit card, it only has the two credit cards that were available. Very important to get the banks mapped to the proper accounts and to get them set up right. Okay, a couple of questions. The first is, what if the bank is not listed? Yodlee does handle maybe 10,000 banks. I'm just throwing out a number, but it's in that range. It's in the 10,000 bank range. But if the bank is not listed, you can contact support and we can request it. It doesn't mean that that they will be able to do it. It depends upon what type of demand they have for that bank. You could also contact Yodlee and try to get them to add it also. But even if this particular bank is not listed, you can still save time by importing either with Excel or an OFX file. I'm not going to really go too much into how to use those, although you'll at least see the screen where you would do them. The big difference is there, your client has to log in and get you the file, or your client has to allow you to have a login in order to get the file. Some banks now are allowing logins for accountants where they can't really do anything, but they can export information. I don't, not sure how many banks offer something like that yet. But the point I'm trying to make here is, even if the bank is not listed, you can still save a lot of time doing this. And so it's a good idea to follow through with it. Next question. What if the link is unsuccessful? Maybe when the person tries to log in, it says it's the wrong login. Or maybe it was the right login, but it just never got finished and didn't pull up the bank information. So there's a couple of things to do in this case. First is what I showed before by clicking on that link. Many times that is the reason. Either they selected the wrong bank or they just weren't sure about the login information, because they'll get to the correct bank with the link and they'll see they can't log in. So in that case, they have to verify their login information and then do it. The second thing is there's thousands of banks that are supported, and banks are making changes. Not every bank is making a change all the time, but out of thousands of banks, some are making a change on the particular bank you may be trying to do. So what may have worked a week ago may not be working today for that particular bank. There's not a lot like that, but out of the whole universe, it does happen. And if that happens, what you should do is send in a support ticket and we will forward the issue to Yodlee. Sometimes it's pretty quick, 3-4 days. Sometimes it might be a week in order to get it done. And sometimes, rarely, they have a great deal of difficulty getting a particular one fixed. But either way, once again, while you are waiting, you can still import transactions using OFX or Excel. And the second point I want to make here is, if you see that you run into a problem with a a particular bank that you're trying to use bank feeds with. Don't let that stop you from using bank feeds, because the time savings are so great that even if maybe you can't do it for this one bank, try it for another one of your clients, and you'll see that most likely you'll then be able to do it. I do understand sometimes in certain areas, accountants, their clients will be using the same bank. But either way, it's a very powerful thing using bank feeds. Anyone who's ever had to do write-up by hand and enter hundreds of transactions knows how much time it can save. I've done a good amount of write-up in my life, and I'm not the fastest of the people. Some bookkeepers are very, very fast, but no matter how fast they are, it's not as fast as importing 100 or 150 transactions that are correctly imported. That was the other problem. When you do it by hand, invariably, maybe I could get 1 month correct, but if I did 2 or 3 months, somewhere along the line, I would have entered $1.25 instead of $125. And then the time spent trying to find those errors can be great. And one final question here. I've used bank feeds before. This really is for something after I've shown it, but I figured I would do it here. But now either it will not connect or not all of the transactions imported. And there's usually two things to do here. Try to refresh or update. And if you try to refresh or update, which I'm going to go into what they are in just a minute, then you should send us a support ticket, specify you've tried these options, and we will contact you. And most likely in that case, it would have to go to Yodlee to work with that bank. So refresh and update. In order to do that, you have to go to the banking screen, upload e-statements, and there will be two little links, update and refresh. Update is usually for where the client's login information changed, and that's is a common reason why now when you're trying to get the bank information, the transactions, it's not going to work because it's trying an old stale login information. So update gives them an opportunity to enter new login information, and refresh actually goes out and gets transactions anew. Okay, so that's the main things with getting it set up. But the real points of what I want to show now is the changes we've made to make it much easier to use the bank feeds when you're doing write-up work. So in order to do that, whereas before, anytime you were doing bank feeds, you had to go into banking, upload transactions. Now you'll go into write-up transaction entry. And then once you get into that screen, assuming that you've already registered the banks, all you do is you come down and click on bank feeds. And that will go out, and maybe not quite as fast as my example, which was just changing from one screen to another, but it is very quick. We'll bring all the transactions from the various bank accounts on each and every bank that is registered with Yodlee. So if a client happens to have 2 or 3 banks, and some of those banks might have a couple of different accounts, all the transactions will automatically be updated to as of 1 day ago from today's date. So you don't have to enter the date to bring it to, you don't have to do any of that information. Remember what date it was brought to, even though on the other screen it usually will have it for you. So it brings everything in, and as you can see, cash disbursements, it brought in transactions. Cash receipts, it brought in transactions. Also for the credit card, which was a separate, not a separate bank, but a separate account, it brought in the transactions. and it brought in from the savings account and also from the checking. So it brings everything in one easy step. So we made it much easier in order to get the data for the write-up, but we also made it much easier in order to edit the information once you get it and to work with that information. And if you needed to add a payee, payer, or a vendor, you would click right here. So it brings all the transactions in. It used to be that if you wanted to edit any transactions, you would have to click on the transaction, it would pull it up in a separate spot, and then you could edit it from there. But we've changed it so that you can actually edit directly from the grid. So let's say if I needed to change the date, not likely I'll be changing the date, but I would be able to do that here. You can't change the payee directly on the grid, although I will show you a much better way to change it in just 1 minute. You could change the reference number, also not likely that it would be changed. You can change the account number. Now on this particular one, the account numbers that came in, they all came in suspense. That's because I actually went out on a brand new client that I'd set up without having vendors, and I imported from my bank account. In a real situation, when it sees the various vendors' names, such as King Cullen or Apple or Manorville, as long as you have those vendors entered, it will know and it'll match those vendors, select the vendors, and then also select the appropriate expense account based upon that. So usually as you're working, and the more you do it, the less you need to do in order to get the information in here. You could also change the amount. Highly unlikely that the amount that came in would be wrong, although it could happen. You can change the offset account. And if you had to do editing more than these, you click on the 3 dots. It opens up a little editing window. And from there, you can do additional editing. And usually the main thing you would do from here is if you were going to allocate between more than one expense account, or maybe if you had departments or jobs set up, then to allocate it amongst various jobs. So this being able to edit directly on the screen, especially the chart of account, makes it much easier. To add a vendor, as I showed before, if you happen to see a vendor that was new, all you do is click on that link and it brings up the add vendor screen. And from here, you enter the name of the vendor. The second part, the alias, is an important part. The alias is maybe for the vendor, you have it set up as Etsy, but the name that shows up on the bank statements might be My Store, or maybe it's Home Depot and it shows up as Home Depot as the vendor, but it shows up as the depot. So you can put in the alias, and that way, when it's importing the next time, when it sees My Store, it knows to assign that to Etsy. So the alias is a way in case there's more than one name. Also important to do when you're here is to enter the default expense account when you're setting up the vendor. That way, that's one less thing for you to do in the future. But what if you wanted to change the name of the payer or the payee? You click down here, and we have a way to do this by bulk. So as you can see, I have oneapple.com, another apple.com, apple.com, several of them. And actually in this import, I think I probably had 10 or 15 of them. So what you do is you click on Change Payee Payer. A little window will pop up. And under the From, every single unique payer that's in this list will be on that drop down. So, I mean, in my case, I didn't go down all the way through all of them, but every unique one would be there. So if you wanted to assign all of them, you would see each one that is there that you could change the payee. So in my case, I want to change apple.com to, and this, when you select on this drop down, it'll have a list of every vendor you have. So I want to change them to be Apple. Right now, you'll notice that they're all suspense accounts. Once I've mapped them to Apple, now going forward, they'll all default to the right expense account and the right name. So that's I think, a powerful enhancement in the system, that you can change them all very quickly with just a few keystrokes. A couple of other things you can do from the editing screen is you can search. So you can search by reference number, or you can search by payee or payer. So in my case, I typed in 7 dash and it found that I went to the 7-Eleven back on September 12th. I guess I got a big gulp for $1.06, which isn't really a business expense, but might want to put it as meals and entertainment. But the idea here is it makes it very easy to find a transaction. If you have 150, 200 transactions there, it makes it easy to come to that transaction. So you go to the search and you enter the information. You can also sort. So in this case, I changed it to sort by payee. And then when I sorted by payee, it brought all the transactions from the 7-Eleven up to the top. For some reason, I went to the 7-Eleven too many times that particular day. But anyway, so now you've got all the information done. You've entered all the expenses. You've got all the proper expense accounts in. The next step is simply to click on Post All Journals. And once you post all journals, then of course they're there and they're ready to go. Last sync date. So since I did this today, it'll show the last sync date. This you see by going to the gear and the banks. And you'll see the last time you synced and how many transactions came in. And every time now when you go forward from that write-up screen, it's going to know to go from the 20th to whatever day is the next time you come in and select to import or click on bank feeds. Okay, now sometimes there will be corrections that need to be done after you've imported information. The most common reason for a correction is maybe you wanted to change the expense account or something, and it's just one particular account or a couple. And what you do is you go to Write Up Edit, not Write Up Entry, you go to Write Up Edit, and from the Write Up Edit Transactions, it'll bring up a list, all the transactions. You can, if you want to, use various things to filter it. You can also sort by different categories. Maybe you just want to see one particular offset account. In my case, I wanted to look at all of them, but you can modify it a little bit so you don't have to see as many transactions. And then you click on the one you want to change, and you would just make whatever changes you wanted to do there, and then save it. So that's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Sometimes the correction that needs to be made is a little bit bigger than just one transaction. So maybe you made a mistake when you were mapping the accounts, and you mapped the first bank to cash checking, but really you wanted it to be the account number 1005. So what I would suggest is the best way to fix this is you go to Write Up, Move Transactions. And from there, you select the cash checking and click on View, and it'll bring up every single one that is with that account. The next step, you enter the proper period, of course. and the proper account. The next step, you click on the little checkbox, and it's going to check all the transactions. Then you come down to move. Once you click on move, it brings up a little window, and you want to say you want to move all the ones that were account number 1000 to account number 1005. And then that would then move them all to the new account. And this type of the power of the move is good for this, but even aside from doing bank feeds, it has some good uses. I mean, I know that I did a write-up one time, and all the payroll checks, instead of going into the payroll account, went into the wrong one, and it was easy for me to then go in and straighten it out that way. Or maybe every account that was marked as utilities, you realize all of the ones that are marked as utilities should have been internet or something. So you could go in and make that kind of correction. So the move, what I'm trying to point out here is the move is a powerful feature aside from just using bank feeds. One final thing, I'm going to be very quick on this one because this is only something to use as a last resort. Conceivably, you can import information, or you could have done something and you're doing a particular period, but you've just got it so messed up, you don't see how you can straighten it out without starting over fresh. And what you can do is you can go to Utilities, Purge Transactional Data. And instead of choosing whole year, you can choose the period ending. Just one second. So you choose the period ending. And from there, once you come down here and click on Purge, all transactions entered in that period will be gone. So this is something as a last resort, but there are times when it is a good way to recover to go forward. But once again, once you've done it, those transactions are gone. Okay, another question that might come up. Bank feeds for a new client. And these are a few things you need to know and understand when you're using the bank feeds in the write-up section. If no transactions have been entered yet or imported, the very first time you go to write-up and select bank feeds, the current month will be updated. So if I had gone on this client, in fact, that's what I did do. I went in there, and when I clicked on bank feeds, it only brought transactions from November. But what this means, because of this, first, before you go to the bank feeds, you should import prior transactions from the bank upload e-statement screen, because there you can specify which dates you want to import. Although you have to remember, the first time you register for bank feeds, the history is brought just for the prior 90 days. So say if I signed up for bank feeds today, I can only go back and get 90 days worth of transactions before then. Anything earlier than that, you would have to either have it exported from the bank statement, or maybe if you were coming from a different software to this one, you could have imported the transactions. And what this kind of means is, let's say if you did it the way I did. First, I imported everything. And on that screen before, when I showed you the last sync date, they all said 11/20. But then I went in and imported, for this particular bank account, transactions from the month of September. So it brought all the transactions up until the 30th of September. But these dates are the dates that the system uses when you're under write-up bank feeds. So if I went into write-up bank feeds now, it would bring from 9/30 to today, or to the next time I'm importing, whereas these two would be from November 20th. So that could cause a duplication. So you need to first to get them in before you start doing it in the write-up screen. Another thing with new clients, if they've been imported during conversion, you have to do the bank feeds from the banking upload e-statement screen, once again, at least once past the date, whatever you imported up until. This is because in the bank feeds, we don't do the matching. And the bank feeds is set up to be always bringing fresh new transactions. So the same as the other one, if you have imported transactions and then if they were imported up through a certain day and you do the bank feeds, it may bring some of the transactions twice. So it's always important at the very start, you go from banking upload. And once more, same thing, a little bit different scenario. This is an existing client. If you have an existing client that either you've used bank feeds before, or even if you entered some transactions, you must do the bank feeds from the banking upload e-statement screen at least once past the date of the import. So that means if I've entered information or imported up until September 30th, I just have to do one from the bank feeds upload e-statement, the banking upload e-statement screen, one import after the 30th of September. From there on, there was no transactions for me to double up or anything. Then I could use the write-up. And finally, for CAS clients, what I'm showing now is for write-up clients. When you're using CAS clients, you don't go to the banking, you don't go to write-up in order to bring the bank feeds. You need to do it from banking upload e-statements, because when you're doing it from there, we have very powerful matching in order to, number one, to clear checks, number two, to make sure transactions aren't duplicated. So a CAS client needs to be done. If you're entering checks or anything like that for the client, they need to be done from banking upload e-statements. Okay. Couple of other recent enhancements that we've added. One is we've put the bank reconciliation with the reports. So it used to be that if you wanted to print out a bank reconciliation, you could only do it from when you were on the bank reconciliation screen, and then you could click on the printer and do it from there. So we've moved it so you can also do it from the reports transaction screen. We've also added several new reports. The reports aren't new, but they're new reports that you can do from the build report sets. And these are sets in case you're not familiar with the report sets. What you can do, you can set up a closed period set and also a closed year set or a custom set. And the closed period set and the closed year set can either go into the cloud cabinet when you close the period automatically for you and your clients, or you could also be emailed to your client when you either close the year or close a period. So you set up exactly what you want to go to them, and then it would go there without any additional work on your part. And finally, the one last thing that we've done as far as his enhancements, it used to be if you were using any kind of like the bill payments or something, and you had clients who were attaching documents, they had to have the permission for Cloud Cabinet in order to attach documents. The reason for that was we didn't want accountants to have their Cloud Cabinet filled up with documents that are being attached and then have to buy more space. And basically what we've done is now attachments within the system, those type of attachments aren't really stored in the Cloud Cabinet anymore. They're stored separately, so it doesn't take up that space and add to how much space you're using in the cloud cabinet. Although most documents, especially PDFs and stuff, are pretty small. I believe that's all I was going to show today. Let's see if I can see the questions now. Okay, so now I can finally see it, and I see people telling me, yes, they can hear me, and they can hear me, but they can't see the screen. Okay. Let me get to the end of all these. So one is, if I have access to the client's bank account, can I register it myself? And yes, as long as I showed in the thing, as long as you have the access, you can do it directly from the register now part. So you don't have to ask them as long as they've given you the information in order to log in. The question is can you select a date range that bank feeds will pull in from, i.e. pulling only a certain dates? Yes, you can, but you can't do it from the write-up bank feed screen. You have to do it from the banking e-statement screen. And somebody says they're having issues with duplicate transactions using upload e-statements. One of two things. Maybe it was something like what I had said. And if not, I'm going to have somebody get in touch with you so we can find out if there's a different reason. Will a copy of the PowerPoint be made available? Yes, it should be available. Not really a copy of the PowerPoint. It's a webinar will be in the in Accounting Power. So you'll be able to go to the particular screen that you want to. It's actually, it's hooked with YouTube. How long does it take to fix a URL that is not working? Like I said, usually it's 3-4 days. Sometimes it's a little longer. Does the client always have to enter a security code to get transactions? It depends upon the bank. Usually not. Usually, in order to register, the security code has to be entered. And I didn't go into that, but like when I registered for my own, it asked me what phone number, and then after that, it sent me the code to enter. But usually it's just once. Occasionally, maybe after a certain number of months, and some banks, there are 1 or 2 banks that do require it almost all the time. And in those cases, it's probably not even a good fit if they're constantly requiring it. But if they require it after a couple of months, usually what needs to be done is that update button that I showed. There's a question, do you have access to rules that assign how the bank feeds, to the rules that assign how bank feeds are assigned? No, we have a pretty powerful program in there to assign to the vendors, but you don't have rules. And I guess that can be a two-edged sword. It does make it in general much easier, but occasionally I could see where there might be a case where you do want to be able to assign things. And that's something we will always take into account for the future, which we may or may not be doing. That I'm not sure. In the closed set, why can't we choose the income statement with comparability? Um, I will put that in as a suggestion. There's a question about Home Depot 123, Home Depot 426. It it should recognize once you put in Home Depot or other vendors. Once you put in Home Depot as a vendor, they should all be recognized as the same vendor. So, and usually I think that's what people would want, but so it shouldn't look at the store number. It should just it should assign them all as Home Depot. Is there any way to shorten the names, automatically shorten the names for the vendors? No, not at this point. If we're doing the write-up quarterly or less often, will the bank feeds pull? I believe it'll pull 90 days or quarters worth of information. So you don't have to do it for write-up work. You don't have to go in and update it every month. The important point is you do have to go and register. Once you've registered, actually, Yodlee goes out and gets the information every day. And then when you're ready to use it, you go out and it goes out and gets it. So it is important to register. If you don't register, like if you're doing just an annual write-up and you don't register until the end of the year, you won't be able to get the transactions. Whereas if you registered at the beginning of the year, they will be there. Although I would always recommend, if you're doing a whole year, I would recommend doing it from the bank statement and do it 3 months at a time, no more than that. If I need bank feeds outside of the 90-day window, can I still download the OFX file? Yes, any time period that you have open on your system, and if the bank will give it to you, you can download those and import it into the system. You should do those before you start doing it from write-up, like I said, and they should be done from the bank upload e-statement screen. There's a few questions here, maybe a little bit more in detail. I'm going to try to see if I can get them entered into the support queue, and we can maybe have somebody get in touch with you. So once again, two things. Number one, thanks for bearing with me during my my problem at the beginning, and thanks for all of you who sent the questions, letting me know that you could hear, letting me know you couldn't see, and I appreciate that. And even aside from that, even when everything goes well, I really appreciate you giving us the time in order to see the program, to see how it can help you. And I also appreciate any and all suggestions that you may want to give me. My email address is dmunnell@accountantsworld.com. And my phone number, although it's better to email me, is 631-415-9252. And the other thing is, when you're in the program, if you click on the support button, there's an option there for suggestions where you can make suggestions in there. So anyway, thank you very much, and have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.